me to talk about Snow Leopard today. And I really appreciate your efforts to promote this academic collaboration between the universities of Pakistan and United States. So that's really worth appreciated. And I am also thankful to the Rotary Club of the Eugene South Town for giving me this opportunity to talk about snow leopard conservation in Pakistan. So basically my experience of snow leopard, it comes from my association with the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, WWF. It was about more than a decade of working experience with WWF. And then my doctoral studies were also on snow leopard. So that's how I have a background in snow leopard conservation, particularly the population ecology and human snow leopard interaction and conservation of snow leopard. So I'll be talking about those things. So I have prepared few slides, and it should not take maybe more than 20 minutes. And I'll be sharing the slides with you. So if you have any questions, please hold those. We can discuss at the end of the presentation. So it's a brief presentation about snow leopard and its conservation efforts in Pakistan. So snow leopard, which are also called the mountain ghost. So why it's called the mountain ghost? Because it's very elusive species. They usually avoid human habitation and human settlements, and that's why it's very difficult to locate and see a snow leopard in the wild. So you can easily see the snow leopards in zoos, but it's very difficult to see and sight the snow leopards in wild because of their elusive nature. And for those who are not familiar with the snow leopard, just a very brief introduction, because I know some people are passionate about wildlife and they know things about wildlife. They love to hear about wildlife, but for those who are not really interested about wildlife, but I must say there is something for you as well, useful information why the snow leopards need to be conserved. So snow leopards are listed as vulnerable on the red list of the species, which is maintained by IUCN. Actually, it's a barometer of the status of species across the globe. So it used to be as endangered until 2016, but in 2016 it was downgraded and it was put in the category of vulnerable. So now it's not endangered, but it's vulnerable. So that's a ranking of the species, threatened species of the world. But the important question is why I am talking about snow leopard in Eugene. You don't have snow leopards in Eugene or Oregon. So why, the question is why I'm talking about snow leopards with people in Oregon or Eugene. Because this creature is called the indicator of healthy high altitude mountain ecosystems. It is the indicator of the health of high altitude mountain ecosystems. And I'm sure people in these times, in the time of pandemic and wildfires and all those environmental changes, we must realize the importance of healthy ecosystems or balanced ecosystems. So this snow leopard is actually an indicator of the high altitude mountain ecosystems and how the high altitude mountain ecosystems look like. You can see the pictures. On the left side it's K2, it's the second highest peak in the world, and right side it's the Mashaburum. It's also above 8,000 meters or 26,000 feet. So that is a very unique landscape. It's one of the most glaciated landscapes in the world when I'm talking about the high altitude ecosystems. And the mountains altogether, the mountains cover about 27% of the Earth's surface and indirectly support about 22% of the world population. So these mountains are really important for all of the world population, irrespective of the people who are living in the mountainous areas or who are not living in the mountainous areas. But the mountains equally benefit the world population. When you see the role of mountains, the high altitude ecosystems as freshwater reservoirs, uh, by providing the ecosystem services in the form of fresh water, the high altitude ecosystems and the mountainous landscapes are supporting about more than half of the total human population in the world. So directly, indirectly, all of the human beings are some way associated, are dependent on the mountains and mountain ecosystems. So that's why it's very important to keep those ecosystems healthy and balanced. When you look at this picture, here you can see the Himalayas and the adjacent mountainous landscapes. So it starts all the way from Bhutan and going through Nepal, India, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan. So this belt is actually, it is the Himalayas, and Himalayas together with other adjacent mountainous landscapes, it makes one of the most rugged and one of the most unique high altitude ecosystems in the world. And the Himalayas and adjacent mountainous landscape also support almost 2/3 of the world population. You see two biggest populations in the world, India and China, they are living adjacent to those mountainous landscapes, and the populations are supported by those ecosystem services. And here you can find the northern part of Pakistan, which I'm talking about today, which is called Gilgit-Baltistan. It is located in the Western Himalayas, and it's an important habitat of snow leopard. And actually, this is the junction of three of the world's famous mountain ranges: the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush, and Karakoram. And this Gilgit-Baltistan, or Gilgit, is junction of these mountain ranges. And the Karakoram highway goes through this place. It connects Pakistan with China. And this region is also, the importance of this region has also been increased due to the present Belt and Road Initiative of China. And one of those routes, which is called the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, that passes through these landscapes. So that's how strategically this is one of the most important places in the region. And it looks like this. You can see the picture. It is Skardu city. It is the second largest city in northern Pakistan. The first is Gilgit, and the second largest city is Skardu. And it is actually the gateway to K2. And it is lot of the high altitude mountain expeditions, they used to come here who want to go to K2. So this is one of the most famous places. And overall, Gilgit-Baltistan is very rich in terms of ethnicity, in terms of cultures. So it's one of the unique places, I must say. And in addition to the rich cultures and traditions, it is also very much unique, yet very fragile when we talk about the ecosystem diversity. So look at this picture. You can locate so many types of habitats and ecosystems. You can see the forest, you can see glacier, peatlands, alpine meadows, a freshwater lake. So it's a mosaic of ecosystems. In this, so this diversity, actually, this ecological diversity, it gives rise to some of very unique species of flora and fauna. So we have about 54 species of large mammals in this small um, catchment, I must say, the Gilgit-Baltistan, and we have more than 230 species of birds. I'm sure there must be more, but those have been documented, and more than 500 species of plants, including uh, highly valued medicinal herbs. And so actually, uh, a resilient ecosystem is needed to sustain all these ecological, uh, all these ecosystems. And this snow leopard is actually indicates that this ecosystem is healthy and balanced. Because this snow leopard lives, it's a top predator, and presence of a top predator in food chain or food web is actually indicates that all the components of the ecosystem are intact and healthy. So that's why we are really concerned about snow leopard. Actually, it shows the presence of snow leopard. It means that high altitude ecology or ecosystem is intact and balanced. So that's why we are concerned about the snow leopard conservation, and the world is concerned about snow leopard conservation. So I'll briefly talk about Pakistan's effort to conserve the snow leopards. So it starts from an assessment conducted in 1968, and that is called the Wildlife Inquiry Committee report. Actually, this was the first comprehensive assessment of the biodiversity of Pakistan. It was technically supported by WWF, and it prioritized the important species and important ecosystems for conservation. And then in 1975, Khunjarab is actually the border area between China and Pakistan. That was declared as a national park. That was actually a landmark conservation activity as far as the high altitude ecosystem in Pakistan is concerned. And then in 1990s, the community-based conservation was initiated. And the government started to engage the local communities in conservation programs. And that I will talk about it a little briefly. And it was really helpful. This community engagement was really helpful for conservation of ecosystems and species. So now we have an extensive network of protected areas in northern Pakistan, including 5 national parks, 2 wildlife sanctuaries, 4 game reserves, and 48 community controlled hunting areas. So that's how, when you look at this diagram, it shows the network of protected areas. So the green places are all national parks, and the yellow spots are the game reserves, and the orange spots here are the wildlife sanctuaries. And this dominant area, which is the orange area, is all about the community controlled hunting areas. So altogether, it is about 40,000 square kilometers, and it is more than half of the total land surface of northern Pakistan has been declared or has been brought under a network of protected areas. So that's one of the extensive effort of conserving the wildlife species and habitats in northern Pakistan. And so currently we have about 350 to 600 snow leopards in Pakistan. And when you see the global population, it is 3,000 to 7,000 animals are found in natural habitats across their natural habitats, and that is South and Central Asia, you know. So out of those 7,000 snow leopards, we have 300 to 600 snow leopards. But the largest population is in China, and then the second largest population in Mongolia, and Pakistan maybe third or fourth in terms of its share in the global population of the snow leopards. So why those are very few individuals, only very few individuals? Because that's again, it's a concern for the global community, for the world community, to conserve snow leopards, because we have only very few individuals left on the face of Earth. And in Pakistan, or in northern Pakistan, the major threats to the snow leopard populations are decline of the wild prey, or decline of its food, the natural food, and then retaliatory killing by the local herders, illegal hunting for body parts, which are quite expensive in international illegal wildlife markets. And then weak law enforcement is also contributing to the declining of snow leopard populations. And now climate change is also said to impact the high altitude ecosystems and indirectly affecting the snow leopards population. And this picture here, you can see it's the domestic livestock. And actually the biggest challenge for Pakistan and adjacent countries for conservation of snow leopard, the biggest challenge is to create a harmony between pastoral activities and wildlife conservation, because those mountainous communities, they rely on agro-pastoral livelihoods, and livestock herding is one of their primary livelihood activity. And when you conserve the snow leopards, the number of snow leopards, when the number of snow leopard increases, they start to attack on the domestic animals of local people. And the local populations, the local herders have to bear considerable losses in terms of the livestock loss. So to balance the conservation and pastoral activities, it is one of the biggest challenges for conservationists and for national park managers in Pakistan and adjacent mountainous landscapes. So the most important thing is to conserve the wild prey, because when we conserve the wild prey, the snow leopards will not attack on the domestic livestock of local people. So that is, I think that is one of the common sense conservation activities. So when you can see the picture here, why I have put this picture is really important, because you can see some animals here. These are actually the Himalayan ibex, and these Himalayan ibexes are feeding or grazing in a farmer field. So it's very unusual, it's very unprecedented that Himalayan ibex descend down to the farmer fields and graze in the farmer fields. And this has happened due to the community-based conservation activities. The local communities, they have been acting as the stewards of the wildlife species. And why they are doing this? Because they are getting some benefits of conservation in terms of this trophy hunting program. They conserve the wild ungulates, wild goats and sheep, and then they offer some animals as trophies, and people pay handsome amounts like $100,000 for one trophy of markhor to hunt, and this amount, 80% of this amount actually goes to the local communities. So that is the good part of this program, because the 80% of those revenues are contributed to the community development projects for socio-economic development activities, including construction of schools, paying the teachers' salary, domestic energy projects. And so that's why the local communities, they really support the conservation activities, and that's how we can see the increasing number of wild goats and sheep. And these wild goats and sheep ultimately support the snow leopard populations. And then another important thing to harmonize these pastoral activities and conservation efforts was to minimize the livestock losses by snow leopard, or livestock depredation by snow leopard. Look at this picture on left side. It's a cattle shed. It's a corral. And it's very open, it's very vulnerable. A snow leopard can easily break into this cattle shed, and when a snow leopard enters into a cattle shed, it kills a lot of animals. And that's why farmers have to bear considerable losses. And on the other picture, you can see it's an improved corral. It's the corral or the cattle shed has been predator proof, it's an improved structure. So that's how the conservation organizations and the government of Pakistan is supporting the local communities to make their cattle sheds predator proof. So that is another important initiative of protecting the snow leopard, or minimizing the conflict between local herders and snow leopards. And then livestock insurance schemes. This is really a new initiative. The farmers, they insure their livestock. They pay a small premium and they get insurance for their livestock. And when their livestock are killed by snow leopard, their losses are compensated. And these are the local community-based committees, local committees who are managing these livestock insurance programs. And the local communities themselves, they verify those depredation cases, and that's how the local herders are being compensated. And another important initiative is conservation education and awareness. This is the title of a book which is called Conservation and Islam. It was published jointly by WWF and IUCN, and this book is used by the religious leaders in their sermons to create awareness about the importance of wildlife conservation. And then there are a lot of nature clubs, those have been established in the local schools, and that's how the people, now the local communities are very much sensitized, and they do not kill snow leopards. So that's how the snow leopard conservation has been ensured. And I am sure some of you may have heard about Leo. Leo is a snow leopard now living in New York, in Bronx Zoo of New York. Actually, the origin of this snow leopard, one of the biggest challenges still we are facing in Pakistan is to deal with injured and orphaned snow leopards. When a snow leopard is injured, or if there is snow leopard orphaned, then we don't have a rehabilitation center. So we cannot rehabilitate. It's very technical field to rehabilitate and to release a snow leopard in the wilderness. But so that's why, look at this picture. This is Leo in 2005 that was recovered by a local herder. And at that time, we didn't have a facility. So that's why the World Conservation Society came in and they facilitated to transport that snow leopard cub to Bronx Zoo. And in another picture, this is Lolly. Lolly was a female snow leopard cub that was displaced in 2012, but now it is in a captivity in northern Pakistan. But I'll share you what happened to the Leo, which was brought to Bronx Zoo in 2005. In September 2006, that cub was brought to Bronx Zoo. And here is another news story, August 27, 2013, and it says about the Wildlife Conservation Society's Bronx Zoo debut, the first snow leopard cub seared by Leo. It means Leo fathered a baby in Bronx Zoo. And I was looking at another news from 2007, and that is snow leopard cub debut at Bronx Zoo. And the youngster has some serious zoo roots. So the grandfather, Leo, was an orphan rescued from Pakistan and brought to the Bronx Zoo. So now the Leo has been grandfather of a cub. So it means, why I'm telling this story, because we are facing the problem of establishing a rehabilitation center. Still we are struggling to establish that rehabilitation center, but we have a rehabilitation center where we have kept this Lolly, and but that is not a very ideal rehabilitation center because it's only 50 by 50 meters or 100 by 100 meters enclosure, and it's not an ideal rehabilitation center for wildlife. So this rehabilitation has been a problem we are facing since long time. And yeah, so now despite all these challenges, the population of snow leopards, they are recovering in Pakistan. I mean, there are quite good signs of recovery due to the efforts of all these organizations, including the government of Pakistan and WWF, IUCN, and some other conservation organizations. They are really joining hands together and trying to conserve the snow leopard populations. And now we can experience some of the good signs in the population of snow leopard. So thank you very much. That was some of the experiences I was sharing about snow leopard conservation in Pakistan. And if you have any question about it, I'll be here to answer.
Zafar, I have a question. And then if you have a question, you just go ahead and unmute yourself and jump in. But how did you personally get interested in the snow leopard and this project? How did you know, what drew you to this snow leopards?
Actually, that was my first job with WWF. I was employed by WWF when I graduated from the university after my undergrads, and I was fascinated by the conservation work actually. And in conservation work, the snow leopard conservation was something that every conservationist wanted to get engaged. So I would say my association with WWF, that brought me into this wildlife conservation business.
Well, I just wanted to thank Zafar for a really interesting presentation. For those of you who may end up coming with us on the Rotary Friendship Exchange, the third leg of the visit will be that we will be staying at Karakoram International University in Gilgit, but I can't guarantee that Zafar will be able to show you a snow leopard, but we can see a lot of other things. But Zafar, can you unshare your screen? You might want to turn that off, but this has been great. So.
Other questions?
Yes, I have one. I really appreciated your program and have had a great awe for the snow leopard. Reading the book, you know, what was it? Trying to find the snow leopard when they never do. And there have been some amazing videos shown of snow leopards. They are just such, not only elusive, but incredibly beautiful, beautiful, with the biggest tails possible. I mean, they're amazing when they move. Have you ever seen a snow leopard? Have you ever gotten close to seeing one in your own country?
It was just a glimpse, I must say, I confess, because though I have spent my 4 years of my doctoral research, I have spent in the wilderness, but I have never closely seen a snow leopard. It was just a glimpse once, and that was from a roadside. When I was really at the higher altitudes and I was going after the snow leopard, I couldn't see it. But when I was just passing through a roadside landscape, it was only a glimpse. So it was not a very close eye-to-eye kind of a contact.
Do you have any idea of what altitude it was when you saw the glimpse?
That could be, that was not that high. That was winter time, and winter time they descend down, and it was about 10,000 feet.
Yeah, which is not big. Still not high. I'm also interested in hearing about how the World Wildlife Fund, which I've supported for many years, first started their efforts to work in the communities to try to set up like all the things that they're doing, protecting, you know, domestic animals. And also, I mean, I'm not wild about the trophy hunting areas, but on the other hand, if it works and it brings in that much money, it's a win-win in that sense. How did that all come about? Because you must have been involved in some of those early efforts.
Yeah, the WWF's involvement has been from 1960s. And in northern Pakistan, actually, initially they were involved in establishing a national park, the Khunjarab National Park. And later on, they were pioneers to initiate this community-based wildlife conservation program. And that is a valley called Bar. Bar is near to Gilgit, and that is in between Gilgit and Hunza town. And that was actually to engage the local communities in conservation. Because without the local community support, it was very difficult to conserve wildlife. So this trophy hunting program, that was something demonstrated by WWF in one of the communities. And that's how the community-based conservation programs were started. So that was the community-based trophy hunting program that WWF actually initiated by helping the local communities.
Can you talk any about the actual communication and how that worked? Because here you have people coming in from Washington, D.C. or whatever, you know, working with World Wildlife Fund, and you're trying to communicate with the community about these things. How did that process work? And what was successful? I mean, what do you think were some of the lessons learned, if you have any idea?
The local community activists and religious leaders. Actually, he was, I must mention about one person in Gilgit, Baltistan. He was a religious leader and a political leader and community activist, a kind of multi-dimensional kind of a personality. And the head of WWF at that time, who contacted that local community leader. So who was influential actually because he was the religious leader and he was involved in politics and he was a community activist. So he was the point of contact for WWF, and the head of WWF in Pakistan who actually utilized that person in the community for outreach. And so that's how it became possible.
That's interesting. Well, it's a process that needs to be kindled in many other places for a lot of other species and preservation, especially with climate weirding. So that's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Linda. Other questions?
I have a question.
Walker.
So for the snow leopards, do they face any?
I cannot hear you.
Yeah, you're real fuzzy.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. I had a quick question about if the snow leopards face any threat from exotic pet trading. Like, do they face any threat from people taking them out of the wild to take as house pets?
No, there was only one incident, and that was where a snow leopard was recovered from someone else's house. And actually the purpose of that person was not to make it a pet. So there are no incidences, because you cannot keep a snow leopard as a pet because it's very difficult to feed a snow leopard and to maintain a snow leopard. It's really difficult. The other wild cats, people, they keep other wild cats, but number one, you cannot legally pet a snow leopard because it is on the appendix 1 of the CITES, means you cannot keep it. And secondly, it's a very difficult job to nurture a snow leopard in captivity. Only a specialized wildlife expert can do that. So that's why there are no incidences. There are no any examples of people keeping snow leopard as pets in their houses.
One of the things that I found really interesting, what you just pointed out, though, well, I mean, and also you can't catch a snow leopard very easily because you don't see them. But it was the whole spectrum of community conservation efforts and tying them in with the health of a community. And I think that from what I know about the conservation efforts with snow leopards, that has really brought that entire discussion to the global stage. That here has been a success story because of community conservation. So is that connected at all with, I mean, what are you doing now at the U of O on your postdoc? Is it connected to that at all? I know you're doing something on community conservation.
I am doing the same kind of stuff. Like it's at UO, I am also doing the community-based conservation things, but it's not snow leopard. It's about the watersheds and watershed conservation of forests and conservation of fisheries and watersheds. But the theme is the same, that how local communities, they can support the collaborative conservation efforts. So I'm here to learn the collaborative conservation efforts in terms of the watershed councils. Oregon is one of the, I must say, national leader in collaborative watershed conservation in the United States. So I'm trying to learn I'm actually comparing the community-based or collaborative conservation efforts between Pakistan and United States. And so that is, still I'm working on community-based conservation here in Oregon, but it's all about conservation of watersheds, collaborative conservation of watersheds. But overall, the theme is the collaborative conservation, whether it's a snow leopard or it's a salmon or so, but the concept is more or less the same.
Well, this has been a wonderful program, Zafar. Thank you so much for bringing it to us and to our attention. You probably know that Rotary has been undergoing an effort to eradicate polio worldwide for years. And in your name, we will be donating 10 vaccinations that will hopefully help us along in that effort to vaccinate 10 children, possibly in Pakistan, to prevent them from getting polio, which is such a devastating disease. So thank you so much for being here, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. That is really an honor for me, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to interact with your club and the members. And
well, you're welcome
really
to come back anytime. The link is the same every Thursday at noon, so you can drop into any of our meetings. The next 2 weeks, we have programs on civil